Last week, we chatted about how our hormones and menstrual cycle affect our motivation and discipline. So let's take it a step further and chat about goal setting as women today. Welcome back to Wellness Fixes the Pod. I'm your host, Dr. Kelsey Vick, a board certified orthopedic doctor of physical therapy and a pelvic floor physical therapist. And last week's episode is probably one of my favorite topics to research. We chatted all about motivation and discipline and why you might feel more motivated or more disciplined during certain times of your cycle, and what to know about how your brain works to give yourself a little bit of grace, but then also to maximize when you do feel more motivated or more disciplined. It's one of my favorite topics to research, and I hope you guys enjoyed that chat as much as I did. If you missed it, it is the episode right before this, but we'll build upon that today and talk specifically goal setting and really just staying consistent. It's not even necessarily like how to be better goal setters, but how to stay consistent when trying to achieve a certain goal. So as I was reflecting over this week's episode, I kept coming back to what have I been consistent with over the course of decades or my life, really. And the one thing that is super easy for me to be consistent with is exercise and movement in general. And this is not to brag at all. It's just something that I feel like I've been able to stay way more consistent with because I have an emotional connection to the long-term goal that I have when it comes to movement. Diet, sleep, hydration, all of those things are things I struggle with. Mindfulness, meditation, like I am not perfect by any means, but for some reason, movement is easy for me to stay consistent with. And I kept wondering, why is that? Why am I so consistent with movement, yet have such a hard time making sure to get my mindfulness practices and my breathwork practices, really anything else that's not movement? I'm so consistent with movement, but why can I be so consistent with movement and not with everything else? And as I was thinking about it, it got me coming back to my deeper why with movement and how emotionally connected I am with that deeper why. My deeper why gets a little bit spiritual, but to me, movement is so much more than exercise, and being consistent with movement is so much more than exercise because movement's how we interact with the world. It's how we do the things that we enjoy. It's how we show people we love them. It's how we build relationships. It's how we interact with others. It's just how we communicate with the world around us. And so for me, it gets so much deeper than just weight loss or honestly even feeling good in my body, although that's part of it. It gets a lot deeper than that. And that movement to me is one of the ways that I interact with the world, that I show people that I love them. And I've seen what it looks like when that is taken away. So we're going to dive into this example of movement using my example, but I also want you guys to think about what is something that you're super consistent with. Think about it really quickly. Like it can be anything. It can be something not health and wellness related. But what is one thing you're super consistent with? We're going to dive into the neuroscience behind goal setting and consistency. But I want you to see if how I explain goal setting and neuroscience and all of these things also apply to you in whatever task or behavior that you're able to be consistent with. So it can be something as simple as you're really good at fueling, you're really good at journaling, you're really consistent with calling your mom every day, you're really consistent in learning something. Whatever it is, think about what you are consistent at and see if some of these facts about how our brains work to build consistency and build goal setting apply to whatever you're consistent with. So for me, movement is that thing that is super easy for me to be consistent with. And one of the reasons is that I have seen what it's like to live without movement from a very young age. I witnessed my grandmother having a stroke when I was 5, and I saw from such an early age how a lack of movement affects someone. So for me, I was seeing my very healthy, very capable grandma go from fully functioning horse riding, tennis playing, to all of a sudden being wheelchair bound. It was a very severe stroke. She's paralyzed completely on her right side. So I saw firsthand what it looked like for someone super close to me, someone that I loved, for movement to be taken away from them. And not that when I was 5 years old, I was thinking that, oh my gosh, that is movement is spiritual. Movement is something that I am going to build this lifelong consistency with because I see what it's like when it's taken away. It was not that at all. But I think that experience is ingrained a little bit deeper than what I think it is. It's one of the reasons I went to PT school, actually, seeing how much movement specialists and movement experts were able to help her and help her regain some of her movement back. But realizing what it looks like to have movement taken away is really what I think got ingrained in my head to be like, you know what? even if it's hard to exercise today, remember what it looks like to not have movement. Remember what it looks like to not have the blessing of movement. And that's really what has solidified that consistency for me. So that experience showed me that movement was a gift. It's a blessing. Going to the bathroom on your own, getting in and out of the car, going to get yourself food, going to get yourself water, anything that you want requires movement to go get. So the older that I got, the more I started realizing what a blessing and what a gift movement is. So not only is it how you exercise or how you make your body healthy or feel more confident, but it's also how you interact with the world, how you live, how you enjoy the people in your life, how you love the people in your life, how you love the things that you do in life. Movement is a huge part of that. Now, as a PT, I've had even more examples of what it looks like to have that movement taken away. And I've seen how having that taken away affects their ability to show up for themselves and show up for others. How it keeps them from doing the things that they love with the people they love. Now, why am I telling you all of this? A super personal story, and one of the things that could probably bring me to tears because it's been such a monumental change in my life that really affected me from a young age. Why am I telling you all of this? It's not just because I want you guys to be like, wow, Kelsey came out the other side and really has built this consistency with movement. That's not what it is at all. It's more to prove one of the concepts of goal setting that really helps to solidify a goal and consistency towards that goal within our brains. So picturing our lives without that goal or failure of that goal really helps us to promote consistency in pursuit of that goal. The stronger that pull is to live with that goal, the more consistent you will be with accomplishing that goal. So taking it back to last week, when we learned that we have an alarm system within our brains that when it senses a disconnect between our long-term goals and what we currently want to do, so maybe short-term pleasures, so let's say exercise, long-term goals, you want to exercise, you want to be someone who exercises, you want to be someone who's able to move in the best way they can for the longest they can. But right now, you really want to just sit on the couch and veg and watch your favorite show. That alarm system will sound, letting your brain know that, hey, currently she wants to do something that is not in alignment with her long-term goals. Can you use discipline to override? Can you use that CEO, that command center, the prefrontal cortex, to override what she really wants to do to remind her that she does have these longer-term goals, that what she wants to do short-term is not going to help her reach those long-term goals? So for me, with movement, there is a greater pull. There's a greater disconnect because for me, movement is not just short-term goals of weight loss, but it's this longer-term goal, this longer-term value, this identity of who I am. I am a mover. I am someone who values movement for my whole lifespan, for not only myself, but also my family and those that I love, to be able to interact with them in the way that I want, to be able to do the things that I want. So movement is a part of me. Movement is part of my identity. And because of that, anytime my short-term wants or desires go against my long-term goals of being a mover or being someone who values movement, that alarm system will sound. And I'll feel a greater pull to get my butt up, knowing that I view movement and exercise as sacred and part of my identity. My long-term goals with movement involve being able to do all of the things I love: walk, run, ski, swim, with the people that I love, both those here with me now, but then also those in the future, like grandkids. I want to be able to get up and down off the floor. I want to be able to run and play and chase after them. So I view movement in that long-term framework. And because of that, my alarm system will sound super loudly to let me know right now, hey, Kelsey, your short-term desires and pleasures are not lining up with those long-term goals. So my command center will be cued to override my desire for those short-term pleasures, to be able to put into action things that will help me reach my long-term goal of being a mover for life. So contrasting that a little bit, one of my other goals is to be fluent in Spanish again. But if I view my life without being fluent in Spanish, I don't have that emotional pull to Spanish as I do for movement. So for me, movement has more of an emotional connection compared to Spanish. The reason I want to be fluent in Spanish is so I can conversate in Spanish with friends of mine who speak Spanish, with patients of mine who speak Spanish, going into Spain or Mexico or a country that speaks Spanish to be able to conversate fluently. Like, those are my reasons for wanting to be fluent in Spanish. But it doesn't have this emotional pull. My reason for being fluent in Spanish does not have as large of an emotional pull as being a mover does, or wanting to value movement or seeing movement as part of my identity. However, if You have goals of becoming fluent in Spanish or whatever language because someone you love only speaks Spanish, or someone really close to you or someone you care about only speaks Spanish, or you want to go visit a country that you feel like your family is connected to in some way. If you have that larger emotional pull, your alarm system will sound a little bit more whenever you do something for those short term pleasures that go against the long term goal of being fluent in Spanish. So it's not necessarily the goal. The goal could be the same for me and for you. I want to be fluent in Spanish. You want to be fluent in Spanish. But if you have a greater emotional pull, your anterior cingulate cortex, that alarm system, will have a louder and larger response because of that emotion that you feel to that long term goal. Another example, you might be super consistent with pursuing school or academic related goals in order to get the degree that you want, in order to either accomplish a certain goal of getting a job that you'd like, or getting the financial compensation, the salary that you like, or it could be to have just pride in yourself, or to be the first one in your family to graduate from college. You might have this super emotional pull towards your academics or towards pursuing that degree that creates this larger alarm system in your head whenever something you want to do goes against those long-term goals, which only helps to motivate you to be that much more consistent when you are trying to go after that goal. So think about whatever you're consistent in. Is there a deeper emotional pull that you feel if you picture your life without accomplishing that certain task? If it is something like, I'm so good at cleaning the house or making my bed, something that seems pretty mundane and ordinary, but if you feel better about yourself, you're someone who values a clean house, values a clean home, or you grew up in a home that possibly wasn't that clean, and because of that, you want to reverse that, where you have this draw to where you picture your home growing up as super cluttered and you have a deterrent towards that home and want to create a clean home. Whatever it is, think about what you're consistent in and see if one of the reasons that you're consistent in it is because if you picture your life without it, you feel this greater emotional pull towards that long-term goal. Now, think of something that you're a little bit less consistent in and why you might be less consistent. Do you have that emotional pull, or is it something like for me, like Spanish, I'm less consistent in learning it because I don't have as strong of that emotional pull towards that long-term goal of being fluent in Spanish as I do for being a lifelong mover. So diving into the neuroscience a little bit more, again, last week we chatted all about the different parts of your brain that help with motivation, that help with discipline, that help to override some of our want-tos and pleasures for things that we have to help us stay more disciplined, even when our menstrual cycle and our hormones are maybe pulling us in the opposite direction. So again, check out that episode. It's the one right before this, episode 79, if you are interested in diving deeper into that. But a lot of consistency and goal setting relates to motivation and disciplines. So let's dive into the fun female brain sciencey part of it all. So we mentioned the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the part of our brain that's that alarm system. It weighs our current want-tos, our pleasures, with the long-term goals that we have for ourselves. And if there's a disconnect between those, an alarm will sound to help us override what we want to do for what we have to do or should be doing. But what we didn't mention last week was that alarm signal and that alarm sound can have varying ranges of intensity based on the emotional and motivational significance of that goal. So, how much does this matter to the person's core motivation and values, their self-identity, their long-term goals? It starts to integrate all of those things to decide the intensity of that alarm. Then it signals our top-down discipline pathways that helps to override what we want to do and replace it with actions that we should be doing to help us reach those long-term goals. The alarm system in the anterior cingulate cortex is extra activated when your goals involve protecting, maintaining, or improving certain relationships, sense of self or identity. I am a mover. That is who I am. So that is a sense of myself. Significant loss or failure. So disappointing or failing people you care about, or a loss of love, status, or security. So picturing your life without the goal that you want to accomplish is a way to help improve consistency towards that goal. It basically helps us evaluate high stakes versus low stakes conflicts and our emotional and motivational attachment towards them. So for different actions and goals, people might have different alarm sounds, like my Spanish example. For me, Spanish, I don't have a huge emotional or motivational connection to, but for you, you might. The same thing can be said with laundry. Like, should I do laundry now or later? Typically low stakes and low emotion. So the alarm system might not sound as loud, but If you have a specific time that you have to get it done with, maybe that alarm system will sound a little bit, but typically low stakes, low emotion. Do I need to eat healthy now? High stakes, high emotion if your health depends on it. If you are in the hospital or a highly medical situation, typically eating healthy is high stakes, high emotion because it'll help your body recover better or fight the disease that it's trying to fight off. Lower stakes, lower emotion is, do I need to eat healthy now? I just want to lose weight. That's a little bit lower stakes, lower emotion because it's not as imminent. It's not right now time restrictive. Like your health, especially if you're in the hospital, feels pretty time restrictive. You're like, I have to do this now in order to help my body. But for weight loss, usually it's a little longer term. Is one meal going to affect it that much? So we might look at that as low stakes, low emotion. But same thing. Do I feel healthy now? It can be high stakes, high emotion or low stakes, low emotion. So another example, I need to exercise now, or I have a goal of exercising. It can be low stakes, low emotion. It can be high stakes, high emotion. You can feel emotionally connected to movement as who you are as part of your identity. It can help you feel more confident. So that might be higher stakes if you're struggling with low confidence. But if your goal is more weight loss or more aesthetic goals, sometimes those goals aren't as deeply ingrained in us, so it can be lower stakes and lower emotion. These are just examples to show that the same goal can have different motivational and emotional significance to different people. So it's not necessarily the goal, but how connected you feel to that goal that helps decide the intensity of that alarm system. Now, think back again to what you're consistent at and reflect on why. Is it solidified in your brain because accomplishing that goal or task has high significance and motivation to you? Can you picture your life not accomplishing that goal or task? And do you have a high emotional response towards that imagery? Now think of something you want to become more consistent with or a goal that you have for yourself. How can you utilize how your brain works to maximize that alarm system that will sound when you veer from the course? Can you tie it to your identity? I am someone who versus I am someone who is trying to. Not the same. You want to tie it back to your identity. Is there an emotion you'd like to tie to that goal to create that greater pull, that greater intensity of that alarm system? And finally, looking at how it might disappoint future you or someone you love if you fail to accomplish that goal or fail to do that task. So using neuroscience and our brains in order to realize why we are consistent with certain things and why we aren't consistent with certain things can help us understand who we are as people, but also help us to navigate different goals that we have trouble sticking to. So this was another super fun episode for me that dove a little bit more in depth to that motivation and discipline, primarily that discipline pathway. But I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you are now a little bit more familiar with how the brain works. I think of the brain as the ocean where I feel like we're only just now starting to understand the brain, just like we're only just now starting to understand the ocean. But I know that we're probably, what do they say? We only understand like 10% of the ocean. I feel like that's the same thing with the human brain, and this is just a part of it. So thank you guys for nerding out with me about this stuff because I think it allows us to give ourselves grace, especially when we fail, when we're accomplishing a goal, realizing, okay, hang on, I don't have the emotional pull or the motivational significance towards this goal that I would like. Maybe I need to reevaluate that. Or if you're going after a goal that you don't really care about and aren't as consistent with, that's okay too. Maybe it's time to switch to a new goal or switch to a new task that you are able to fight for that consistency a little bit more because you do have that emotional or motivational pull towards that task or goal. I guess this episode makes sense in this like winter arc season where we're ending out the end of 2025 and prepping for 2026 or wanting to end on a high note. I'm not prepping for 2026 yet, but ending 2025 on a high note. I guess it makes sense that these episodes fall within this time frame, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and I will see you guys again on the next episode of Wellness Fixes the Pod.